How and why red-blooded American men disappeared from America's top colleges and universities. Episode 3. That is the topic of today's video. My name is Craig Meister. I'm a college admissions coach. You can learn more about me and how you can work with me one-on-one throughout the entire college admissions process on my website, which is collegemeister.com. And if you're interested in learning about whether or not you are or your student is on track for selective college admission in the United States of America, I encourage you to go over to my free 3-minute online assessment, areyouontracktogetin.com. Again, that's areyouontracktogetin.com. You'll complete a free 3-minute assessment on that website. Your results will be emailed to you right away, and they will help you determine whether or not you are or your student is on track for selective college admission in the United States of America. Now, before I go further, I want to make sure you understand that the 2 previous episodes of this series are linked below this one. So if you are interested in learning about foundational topics to what we are going to be discussing today, I encourage you to watch those videos, frankly, first. Episode 1 and Episode 2, because this is an ongoing series I'm doing exploring how it has happened, how we have arrived at a time in which red-blooded American men are basically missing in action for the most part, if not entirely, from America's most selective colleges and universities. We've covered 2 very important pieces of the puzzle in the first 2 episodes, but today we're going to touch on a new third topic. So just to quickly summarize, let's assume you're a typical red-blooded American young male and you have not enjoyed, as a result, your K through 12 schooling in the United States of America too much. But you've arrived at 10th and or 11th grade in a position where you're considering pursuing higher education. And then you also can find your way through the maze that is determining which standardized test to take, when to take it in order to do your best on it. And let's say you do pretty darn well. You're a smart, red-blooded American man, and you have pretty darn respectable scores to prove it. And on the SAT or ACT, and maybe you even have really great scores. Maybe you got a 1550. Maybe you got great grades throughout your entire high school experience as well. And even though it has not been the most enjoyable, because it's of course been very girl-centered, and even though the standardized testing gauntlet that you had to endure through 10th and or 11th grade sent a lot of mixed messages to you, you ultimately determined which test was best for you, and you did beautifully on that standardized test. So you have the core foundational elements to get into and succeed at a highly selective college or university in the United States, but you're a red-blooded American male. So you have particular dispositions, interests, preferences, and that is what makes you a red-blooded American man. And now you're finally getting to the point where you're going to put pen to paper and actually apply to some of these highly selective American colleges or universities. Let's say a few Ivy League schools maybe, or Ivy League selectivity type schools like Duke's or Stanford's or even NYU's or Northwesterns or Vanderbilts. I mean, you're really looking at some very selective American colleges or universities. And those are the private versions. Of course, you might be looking at schools like Michigan or UVA or Wisconsin or UNC. These are public schools that are highly selective. Maybe even you're in California or looking to go to California, UC Berkeley, UCLA, you name it. You're looking at highly selective American colleges or universities. Now, of course, for UC Berkeley and UCLA, at least as of this filming, those schools will not look at your test scores. So right in there, you have a real strike against you because you're objectively very strong, but they don't care at the UCs. But no matter the case, you're gonna soldier on because you're a red-blooded American male. And again, I just want to make very clear, I said this in the other videos as well. I'm not talking about all American males. I'm talking about what I would call the middle 60%. That would be sort of the archetype of a red-blooded American male. Look it up if you don't know what it is, but someone who's individualistic, who is, polite and strong and values his health and values things that are typically associated with being valued by red-blooded American men who are coming of age 16, 17, 18 years old. Yeah, this types of interests that they have inside the classroom, outside the classroom, what they like to do for fun with their buddies, etc. So all that's in mind. And now it comes time to actually applying to some of these colleges. You've done your research, but maybe you don't have that much money, so you maybe haven't researched enough to go in person to too many college campuses. Maybe you live in Tennessee, so you did visit Vanderbilt, or maybe you live in Michigan, so you visited Michigan. So you've got a general sense that you like schools like Vanderbilt, or you like schools like Michigan. So you haven't visited maybe too many colleges, but the ones you have visited have given you confidence that you have a pretty sturdy list. It's balanced between safeties, possibles, and reaches. But again, your goal is to get into the reaches because you value education, you value further education, you value higher education, you want to be the smartest you can be. And so if you're going to invest money or your family's money in going to college or university, you want to make sure that it's going to be worth the return on investment, right? So you're aiming for some pretty selective schools with some pretty strong programs in the major that majors that you're interested in pursuing and ultimately pursuing maybe as a career. And then you open up, or you learn maybe sometime in 11th grade year through your English teacher, your high school counselor at school, you open up the application for this current cycle, or maybe you're given a sneak peek in a junior seminar class or whatever, or an English class, like I said, or during a college counseling meeting about what it takes to actually complete an application to highly selective colleges and universities. And you see there's a lot of writing involved. Now, it just so happens that because you're a smart, red-blooded American man, you actually can, you have a facility enough with writing. Now that is not to say that is typical, frankly, because I will do another video shortly in a whole nother, not in this series, but another series about just the complete de-emphasis on writing generally in the United States in K through 12 education. So actually you would be very blessed and lucky to be a male or a female, regardless if you're a red-blooded American male or a non-red-blooded American male or a female or whatever, to get to 11th grade and actually be a pretty good writer. That's pretty rare these days because they don't teach writing anymore. They teach STEM, but they don't teach writing. And of course, writing is a reflection of your ability to read. They don't do as much reading as they used to do. And also your ability to think critically and be a strong critical thinker. And critical thinking is definitely verboten in a lot of public schools and a lot of private schools as well. They just want memorization. So as a result, you'd be very blessed actually to get to 11th grade, regardless of your demographics in the United States, and actually be able to write. But let's say you're a pretty smart red-blooded American male, and that's about what the series is about, of course, red-blooded American men and why they're disappeared from highly selective colleges and universities. So you get there and you see, well, there's a lot of writing involved, and this is actually not only a lot of writing. On the common application, there's a 650-word essay. Maybe he wants to apply to Georgetown. There's more essays on that one. Maybe he wants to apply to MIT. There's more writing on that one. But maybe he's just doing common app schools. So maybe he's doing Vanderbilt and WashU and Northwestern type schools, or maybe, like I said, Michigan and Wisconsin and UNC and UVA. But on all of these, there's a lot of writing. There's, more writing here, more writing there. And the writing is not just asking you to say why you want to study business or why you want to study history or why you want to study German. It is asking you to start writing down a type of genre of writing that does not come naturally to you. Now, this is very important. We hear all the time about how standardized tests are built in such a way to privilege a certain demographic over another demographic. And that's why they must be removed from society, because they are a danger to society. We hear all the time about how standardized tests as well, privilege the privileged. If you have enough money to do test prep, you're going to do better. Now, that, of course, doesn't account for the fact that there are plenty of very rich kids who have no motivation and they can go to test prep, but their scores don't budge because they have no motivation. But in any case, again, that's taking away the personal responsibility agency side of the student, regardless of the income of the student. But so we hear all the time about the ways in which different structures in our society are systemically discriminating against this party or that party. But when it comes to writing, we don't hear too much about that. But did you happen to know that females and certain males are much stronger at communicating feelings? and communicating it all, frankly, like in full sentences. And I would argue that red-blooded American men, even if they're smart and have done well on standardized tests and get good grades and are generally well behaved and respectful of their peers and their teachers, etc., the demographic that is a red-blooded American man, generally, think of a red-blooded American man as sort of like soft-spoken. It's like not talking too much. It's not like a busybody type of guy where he's talking all the time and journaling and writing his diary. These are often things associated, of course, with girls. Girls talking about and I'm not saying, of course, it's all girls. There are plenty of girls who do not gossip, who do not write down in diaries or journals. These are, of course, not explaining all females or all males. There's a spectrum. But again, in this video series, we're talking about red-blooded American men. So if you think about a red-blooded American man, you usually think about someone who sort of, what is that phrase from the 1900s, or maybe it was even earlier? Speak softly and carry a big stick or something like that. Wasn't that a phrase or something like that? This idea of someone rugged, someone who absorbs a lot of information, but doesn't necessarily talk too much. They talk to their friends but they don't over talk. They don't talk a lot. They think they absorb a lot, but they're those who speak least know most, and those who speak most know least is a maxim. And so when you think of a red-blooded American man, it's not like he's talking. It's not like in Motormouth Mabel here, where she's talking all the time. And nonstop talking with boys and girls, whatever. He's more reserved than that, a red-blooded American man, because he's absorbing what's in the world. He's trying to learn from it. And so these are students who, even if they're very smart, they're not necessarily schooled in communication skills generally. Like they're not maybe scoring the highest in writing generally, because they just don't write as much as other demographic groups, both other demographics of males, sort of the other 40% of males, as I would call it, who maybe write more, maybe more introverted, more studious in terms of their interests, their whole full spectrum of their interests. And of course, there are all different types of guys who, maybe are more like girls in their communication skills as well, or the typical girl, let's put it that way. And again, a lot of girls from an early age are sharing their feelings much more with each other, with their siblings, with their parents. This genre of writing that is the common application essay is very much a genre of writing that is not practiced much, even if you are a really good writer. Let's say you're really good at a history term paper or a book report type style paper or a scientific paper even. Once you get to the Common App essay, all students see a genre of writing that they don't usually see in public and private schools in the United States, which is personal persuasive writing. Now, if you go to a school where personal persuasive writing is a thing and it's practiced from third grade on or whatever, when writing is really starting to be emphasized, you have been blessed by the Lord above to have gone to a school where you've actually been able to learn the art of personal persuasive writing. But most students in the United States get to 11th grade having never written even one personal persuasive essay. But you can add to that the fact that the red-blooded American male also isn't exactly exercising the art of communication skills as frequently, in my argument. My proposition is as much as the other males are, and certainly as much on average as girls are, females are. So when he sees that he's going to have to write a Common App essay talking about a failure, and he's not really one to really share his feelings about failures, or a time that was meaningful in his life, like, that's very weighty language for a red-blooded American man. And all the prompts on the Common App basically are digging into feelings, social emotional growth. These are not concepts most red-blooded American teens or red-blooded American men think about often. They don't think in those terms often. So this is like a harder concept to wrap one's head around and start thinking, maybe he's not really schooled in writing that much anyway. He's been able to get A's and do well in standardized tests anyway without developing writing skills generally. But on top of that, this particular genre of writing is sort of like a new thing for him. Okay, but he's going to suck it up. He's going to try his best to share his feelings, which is not something he does naturally with anyone close to him, let alone a stranger. The Common App essay who's going to determine whether or not he can study business or history or whatever it might be in college. But he's going to try, and he does it. And let's say he does it well. Maybe he does a really good job of sharing insight, and maybe he has a thesis. Like I always say, you should have a thesis. Then he finds there's an activities page on the Common App. And, being just a black and white person, he's reading it and he's like, okay, I'm going to fill this out. I'll fill out the activities page. And he does it. And he thinks he's doing a good job. There were 10 slots, but that's all there were, even though he's done maybe 15 different activities related to whatever he's involved in. Of course, he's involved in sports. He's a red-blooded American man. He may be doing some other things as well. Maybe he's a real star. Maybe he's class president for all I know. Maybe he's a leader in a few clubs that of interest him. And so maybe he actually had 14 activities, but he only filled out 10 on the activities page because there are only 10 slots on the activities page. And on the activities page, it's so short, it's like this is more his speed. Like he'll summarize very quickly his 2 or 3 responsibilities on the activities page of the Common Application, and then he'll move on. He'll obviously proofread it. He's making sure he's not going to have spelling errors or typos or whatever, and things that should be capitalized will be capitalized, and things that should be lowercase will be lowercase. He'll average out the hours of weeks and weeks per year he did it. But he doesn't go above and beyond to communicate more because, again, it doesn't come naturally as a red-blooded American man that he should maybe develop a full-fledged extracurricular resume like I encourage all applicants to highly selective colleges do, because the vast majority of highly selective colleges in the United States do accept full-fledged extracurricular resumes in one way, shape, or form. And I actually have a course entitled How to Build an Extraordinary Extracurricular Resume. You can find a link to that below this video, where you can learn how to actually develop an extraordinary extracurricular resume that is far more muscular and robust than the type of content you can share on the Common Apps activities page, and therefore will help you supplement or augment what you've already put in the activities page elsewhere, somewhere in that application. Where, again, I would argue at the very least in the additional information section of the Common Apps writing page, but in many cases, colleges allow you to upload resumes. Selective colleges will often, not all the time, but allow you to upload a resume to its supplement on the Common Application, and some will just accept PDF resumes in an email to supplement or augment your application. But again, this will not cross the mind of even a high-achieving red-blooded American man in most cases, because why is he looking to write some more? He's already written a Common App essay, and he's not really looking for the opportunity to write a whole new document detailing in great depth all of his responsibilities and achievements, because he's surmising by reading the application that the colleges only care about his top 10. And he's done a serviceable or admirable job of completing that activities page. So he's not doing the maximum, but he thinks he's doing what he needs to do in order to be given a fair shake in terms of admission, because he's filling out the activities page. And then he gets to the supplement and he sees there's an option maybe for a resume, but it's an option, so he's not going to do it. He's a red-blooded American man. He has better things to do than that. And he already thinks he did a serviceable job, like I said, on communicating about the extracurriculars on the activities page. But then on top of that, he sees that there are supplemental essays. And this is another genre of writing altogether. This genre of writing is personal, persuasive, but it's also sort of like a research essay. So in some ways, he'd be better at these because you have to sort of connect the dots between you and your value system and the college and its value system and how you're a marriage made in heaven. But some of the essay questions are just whack in his mind. Like that's maybe a 1990s term or whatever, but they're sort of touchy-feely a little bit, like a little bit beta boy, frankly. I mean, for lack of a better word, in terms of what they're seeking students to submit, it's very clearly geared toward not the red-blooded American man, the types of questions you often now see on supplements. What are the questions I'm referring to? Well, some of the best, frankly, are things like Dartmouth's. Like, Dartmouth celebrates the ways in which its profound sense of place informs its profound sense of purpose. As you seek admission to Dartmouth's class of 2028, what aspects of the college's academic program, community, and/or campus environment attract your interest? In short, why Dartmouth? Another one is, There's a Quaker saying, let your life speak. Describe the environment in which you were raised and the impact it has had on the person you are today. And then finally, be yourself, Oscar Wilde advised. Everyone else is taken. Introduce yourself. And there are other ones as well. I mean, there are other options like labor leader and civil rights activist Dolores Huerta recommended a life of purpose. Quote, we must use our lives to make the world a better place to live, not just to acquire things, she said. Quote, that is what we are put on the earth for, end quote. In what ways do you hope to make, or are you already making an impact? Why? How? Now, there are other schools, of course, that get even more therapeutic in their language with their essay prompts. I could share a lot. I could share quite a lot. I'm not going to share them all, but common themes include inclusivity, building community, being nice, being respectful, being nice, building community, why inclusivity is important to you, why you bow down to diversity. And I want to make very clear, I'm not against any of those things. But the red-blooded American man is not often thinking about these things top of mind. And other groups of students or individual students often do think of these things quite a bit. And it's really important to them. And obviously it's important to the colleges. So it's not coming naturally to think about, for a red-blooded American man, how can I wake up today and be nice to everyone? Or how can I build community with people dissimilar from me? And this is true of whether or not you're a black red-blooded American man or a white red-blooded American man. It's just not the first thing that comes naturally to a red-blooded American man to think about, how am I going to be on my best behavior all the time? How am I going to be nice? How am I going to celebrate diversity today? How am I going to explore my identity today? And is my identity going to change by this afternoon? These are not things that often just strike the red-blooded American man as natural thoughts. So you can imagine, if you're a red-blooded American man seeing these questions again and again and again and again, they're going to start to have some questions themselves about whether or not they should be applying to some highly selective American colleges that keep asking about this. You know, Elon, which is not that selective, but it's somewhat selective. It's, theoretically, it's very believable if you're applying to schools like Vanderbilt and Emory and WashU that you may also be applying to a school like Elon. And it's selective enough. Take this opportunity to let Elon know more about you. Your top 5 list should be something unique to you and will give us a glimpse at who you are. Be creative! ! You may choose any theme for your top 5. Do you love cooking? List your top 5 recipes. Are you enthusiastic about anime? Name your top 5 characters. Do you watch or participate in a lot of athletic events? Name your top 5 moments. Explain why these are your top 5. Another question on the Align application is name 3 songs from your playlist. So these aren't even essays. These are just sort of lists. Who are you? Describe yourself. Emory in this past year had a question about which book, character, song, monologue, or other creative work of fiction or nonfiction seems made for you and why. Reflect on a personal experience where you intentionally expanded your cultural awareness. So what am I getting at here by sharing these? And there are many more. And again, I could read NYU's, which is almost like a labor leader, this, and civil rights activist, that. Whether you're a white red-blooded American man or a black red-blooded American man or a Hispanic red-blooded American man or an Asian American red-blooded American man, guys don't think like this. Guys do not talk like this. This is not speaking the language of a red-blooded American man. And you get banged with these again and again and again. Just completely again and again and again. it's not the natural inclination of a red-blooded American man to want to respond to these questions. They are not even written in a manner that is digestible to most American men. They have to read it again. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, then you probably are not a red-blooded American man. And so obviously it's in English. And everyone can read English if you're in a position like this red-blooded American man in my example is. But it's written in this sort of highly, like I said, therapeutic language. It's written for women by women. Okay? It is. It just is. And also, of course, a certain segment of males who have gotten in the zone over the K through 12 schooling to sort of respond to this. Or maybe you're naturally more inclined to thinking and talking and behaving and communicating like this. But for the red-blooded American male, reading essay prompts like this disproportionately negatively impact their ability to complete their college applications, even to highly selective schools, because this is not up the alley of a typical red-blooded American man. Now, I'm not saying that they can't complete them. Obviously, they can. But what I am saying is it's very clear that the authors of these essay prompts, combined with the general sort of leading nature of a lot of these prompts, I don't think I even did justice to the types of prompts you will often encounter on these application supplements. But it's very clear to a smart, red-blooded American man that there's a type of demeanor, a type of disposition, a type of tone, a type of philosophy behind the questions. And that you have to sort of buck up and sort of get in line and start thinking this way, behaving this way. And a certain number of red-blooded American men will simply peel off. And they'll start looking at schools like Case Western and others that don't require supplemental writing or have supplemental essay prompts that are far more businessman-like in the sense like, why do you want to study at our school? Or what do you want to major in and why? As opposed to these sort of highly emotive and, oh God, the ones about identity now, of course, this really has taken a turn for the worse since the affirmative action decision in 2023. So many colleges are talking about how much do you value diversity? How much do you value, what is your identity? Talk about a side of yourself we don't often, this, guys, again, I'm not saying that guys can and shouldn't value diversity. Many do. But they don't think about these ideas often in ways that non-red-blooded American men do and females would, because relationships, self-concept, self-esteem, these are all different. These are ideas that are more on average important to females than they are to males. And then definitely if you're taking out the subgroup of red-blooded American men and you think about what is a stereotypical or archetype red-blooded American man, these are not ideas that are commonly crossing their minds. Yet they're peppered with them again and again and again on the supplemental essay prompts. So some of the very high achieving males will start to, and I work with them every year, will start to look for supplements that just aren't so painful to complete. Especially after they've gotten through maybe their first couple of choice colleges, they'll start looking at colleges, just to wrap up, that are less exhausting for them to complete, because this is not naturally coming to them. But in other cases, they will soldier on, they will continue to complete these, but they will not share deep emotional trauma like a female would or other males would. They will not often really work harder on tailoring the word choice or the transitions between paragraphs like others who are much more schooled in or naturally inclined to communicate artistically and effectively on a regular basis would or do. So you're getting all these hits at you, and a red-blooded American male may start limiting his list. He may apply to fewer schools. He also, too few schools in some cases. He may overreach in some cases and underreach in others. So maybe he just has a few safeties and a few big reaches, and then he only goes to the safeties. So as a result, because the actual completion of this process is not as naturally coming to him. Again, add to that the fact that it's very clear, if you're a smart person of any background, that when you keep reading the same types of essay prompts on these supplements, that the colleges are looking for a particular type of person. And increasingly, a red-blooded American man sees it's not him, or it's not him. They want people who are going to emote on campus. These common application essay prompts, as well as the supplemental essay prompts, are right up the alley of students who are highly wanting to talk out their feelings, their problems, wanting to make sense of the world, not only on a rational or objective manner, but on a deeply subjective and emotional manner. And again, you're isolating for a particular type of candidate, which the red-blooded American man is not. So you can imagine that going through this process it's very likely, even if you're highly achieved academically and on paper on a standardized test, the part in which you may really start to fall down on the application would be the actual application itself. If you're a red-blooded American man, disproportionately to maybe others who would thrive in this environment. Many do, particularly female applicants, but also a subset of male applicants, the other 40%, I would argue, that are either naturally inclined and intrinsically or extrinsically able to roll with this much more emotional style of writing, this like, again, I say therapeutic style of writing, and again, some would argue this more feminine approach to communication. Red-blooded American men would very much prefer, in most cases, a very direct question of like, why Harvard, or why Penn. And some of these colleges had questions like that, not necessarily those two, more questions like that in the past, but over time, the questions have turned into much more safe spaces for how female brain would want to communicate on applications, as opposed to a safe space for how a male would normally want to or be inclined to communicate on an application or writing. So this contributes. Again, I want to make very clear that every individual, male and female, is different. And I want to also make very clear that I don't believe anything I've shared in this video or the previous two videos should be enough of an excuse for a red-blooded American male to throw up his hands and quit and stop. You got to play the game to win, right? You got, and even if you don't like the game. The problem is enough males, red-blooded American males, are turned off almost at every step of this game. And you can imagine, like, this could be 3 strikes and you're out. For some students, they're like on the edge, even though they're very talented, they're like, oh, I'll just apply to my state university. It's a 70% acceptance rate. I'll have probably better fraternity parties there. I'll be able to root for the sports teams. They don't have sports team as much school spirit at Northwestern, definitely not University of Chicago. So they self-isolate out. God, look at Chicago's essays are just wild. Obviously, they're not as emotional, I don't think, but they're definitely a whole nother genre of writing, which is, highly creative, highly intellectual writing. And again, even if you're very smart, that may not be your cup of tea. So what's happening almost at every stage of this process is the red-blooded American male is self-selecting out of engaging in the battle at all. And I want to make very clear that I'm very sad about that. I do not believe anyone should be feeling like they need to self-select out of this process. I would be very anti a process that at every stage of the game advantaged males. I would be. I can't imagine what that would be necessarily, but of course that it would exist. I guess one argument would be standardized testing is the only consideration for admission. And when I talk about standardized testing, I'm talking about the 1950 SAT. That arguably and believably could be argued to definitely advantage males. And especially the red-blooded American male that existed, especially in the 1950s. Like I've argued and sort of hinted at throughout this series, the red-blooded American male has also evolved over the years, and he's not what he used to be either. And there's probably far fewer of them, of course. But especially relative to the overall American population. But there's still quite a few of them, but they're being intentionally presented with hurdles at every step of the process to get them across a finish line of actually entering a highly selective American college or university. Some of it you may chalk up to happenstance and cultural mores and norms. But other bits of it are quite intentional, but they're not spoken about. They're not spoken about. And the essays and the overall structure of the Common Application and other college applications are very much geared toward, in many cases, the non-red-blooded American male mind. Now, as proof of this, you may want to compare the MIT application, especially maybe of 5-10 years ago, to the current Common Application. The MIT application of today is still an application that, if you really look at it carefully, I would argue the Georgetown application is too. Both of them are much less biased toward the type of writing that you see again and again and again on the Common App and the Common App supplements of the schools that subscribe to the Common App. So right there, you get a sense that there could be a spectrum of different types of colleges asking highly different types of questions. And those two colleges in particular, because they've chosen to remain off of the Common App as of this filming, give us an insight or a window into what the diversity of applications felt like in a pre-Common App environment. But since the Common App has happened, and all of them subscribe to sort of prompts on the Common App as sort of the premier essay in most cases. Obviously, Northwestern this past cycle dropped the requirement of the Common App essay, but you can still complete it. There's been a homogenization of the types of essay questions written, and they are definitely on the female side of things in terms of how they are communicated. I'm not saying this is good or bad for society. I'm just saying it's definitely bad if your goal is to encourage red-blooded American males to go to highly selective colleges and universities. And that in concert with what is often a very unhappy experience, K through 12, for red-blooded American males. So they're already not a fan of education. They associate education negatively, as I mentioned in video number 1. And also the standardized testing patchwork quilt of policies and de-emphasis on what standardized tests used to cover. Plus, many colleges will no longer give you as many points, if you will, in the review process any longer for strong standardized test scores because of all the subjective or softer skills analyzed throughout the application, including those talked about today, the writing on the application. You can imagine that red-blooded American men at every step of the way are being self-selecting out or are being hurt throughout this process to really strut their stuff in a way that others thrive throughout this process. So that's episode number 3, which is the actual structure of the Common App, the essay questions asked on that, and the supplements, and also this option for an optional resume and going above and beyond versus just filling in the blanks. All of these things are naturally inclined to disadvantage red-blooded American males. Now, again, I want to make very clear, I will say it again, I don't care if you think I'm repeating myself. I think it's so important for context. None of these things stated so far, I think, should be enough to dissuade someone who really wants to pursue a higher education from doing the bang-up job that he can do on all these steps of the process. But it is enough, often, to distract, confuse, concern a red-blooded American male enough where the college list evolves in such a way where he's not applying to as many selective schools anymore. Or even if he does apply, he's not going to be as advantaged at communicating about his feelings and how he grew as individuals who write and think like that on a daily basis. And on these supplements, he may not have the presence of mind or the desire to talk about his top 10 list or how he wants to change society for the better or why he values diversity or inclusivity. And I want to make clear, this is not referring specifically to white red-blooded American males. There are so many black red-blooded American males I've worked with. They get to these questions and they're like, what the heck? What the heck is this? What is this? This is stupid. This is dumb. And then they'll say that. Black, white, Hispanic, they'll all say it. And I'll tell that, and then they'll very rightly say to me, Craig, I'm really questioning whether or not this is something I want to do anymore. Like, is this going to be really a higher education? Is this really going to be a good, worthwhile investment? They're asking me these questions as the price of entry for admission. And I just want to study X, Y, or Z, and has nothing to do with any of these things in my mind, in the student's mind. You can understand why there would be sort of friction in the student's mind, especially a red-blooded American male's mind, because it doesn't line up. It doesn't make sense. Why are these questions being asked and not questions much more focused on the major? And again, in some colleges, they do ask those. But that's farther and fewer between these days than 15, 20 years ago. And so, again, look at things from the perspective of that red-blooded American male, regardless of race and regardless of income level, who has the disposition and interest and preferences of what you would normally associate with a red-blooded American male. We're now at a point where it's 3 strikes and you're out in these 3 videos I've done so far, and I'm not even finished. I'm going to keep going with this series. And of course, share below your comments. You may think everything I'm saying is off base, and you're of course entitled to that, but I'm going to keep giving a couple more, at least, reasons why red-blooded American males are being cordoned off from entry into highly selective American colleges or universities because of the way in which the entry process takes place over not just one's high school career, but one's overall K through 12 schooling. But the remainder of the videos in the series will really focus most on what's happening in 11th grade or later that adds even more icing on the cake as to why a red-blooded American male, regardless of income level, regardless of race or cultural background or religion, would really start to have more questions about whether or not he will fit in at a highly selective American college or university, or even would want to. And therefore, he would maybe opt for many other options, whether it be another type of college or university, or not even going to college or university at all. We'll cover that in more depth later on in the series. I hope you enjoyed this video. And I do understand, again, that I am loquacious, I am verbose. Some of you like that because you can see me thinking as I talk, and you can see I have no script. Others of you hate it because you think I'm long-winded, and that is obviously true. But you didn't want to engage in a long-winded video, and you're entitled to that, then don't watch my videos, my friend. But otherwise, thank you again for enjoying this video. If you got into this point, I guess you at least wanted to experience it at the very least. So please give it a thumbs up, and also consider subscribing to my channel. And if you'd like to work with me one-on-one throughout the entire college admissions process, or maybe even for just part of it, I encourage you to go to my website, collegemeister.com. Until next time, stay safe, stay well, and most importantly, stay stress-free throughout the entire college application process.